Matt.
Perfect.
Good morning, everyone. We're just gonna wait for everyone to come in. Um, Sweet. People are trickling in. We have an exciting topic for today. We have Jeremiah Bartlett and Cashel. And in a minute or so, Troy's going to go over some housekeeping things and then we'll get started.
Cool. When we get started. So welcome everybody. Good morning and welcome to our Coffee and Climate. As you know, it's our monthly series from our One Climate Future team talking about topics and concerns that are related to implementing Portland and South Portland's joint climate action plan. So today we're really excited to be talking about a lot of work going on in both Portland and South Portland to make streets safer, make transportation safer for people on foot, on bike, promoting transit, and also people in motor vehicles. So there's been a lot of activity and policy work in both cities recently, and there's a lot of different strategies that we're working on implementing. And so we're really, really excited today to have Jeremiah Bartlett, who is our transportation systems engineer in the city of Portland, a veteran transportation planner and manager. And we also have Cashel Stewart, who at one point was on the One Climate Future team in South Portland and now is at GPCOG as a transportation planning manager. So they have some great information to share with us. And so we will have an opportunity to take questions. So you can drop things in the Q&A. Or if you want to ask your question live, we'll be taking live questions at the end. You can raise your hand and one of us will call on you so you have a chance to ask your question directly if you'd like to do that. Am I missing anything, Carly?
Nailed it.
Well, actually, we do know we're recording that we are recording this, and so we'll be sending out a link to the recording, so you can, if you miss it, for folks who couldn't watch live, you can watch it, and again, feel free to share that with others who may be interested in. I
Yeah, and
think
any resources that are mentioned today, we'll include them in the follow-up email as well.
great. And so I think we're going to start off this morning with Jeremiah, and so I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Troy, and thank you very much, Carly. I assume everyone can see this image, which is the
Yep.
first slide of the presentation. So yeah, I'm Jeremiah Bartlett, Transportation Systems Engineer at Public Works. I've been with the city about 14 years. Certainly, as folks know, as time has gone on, there's been more and more of a focus on accommodating different modes of travel, and more recently, a real push toward how do we implement things from a much more safety focused perspective. So, what I want to do is go through some of those related topics. I want to just say up front, though, that this slideshow, this little presentation, is by no means an exhaustive list of everything going on related to transportation right now. We'd probably need a 2 hour presentation for that. And I do not have the vocal cords for that, nor do people have the attention span, but I am always happy to join you folks at another session if we want to talk about all the things going on. So this will be sort of a specific focus, and we'll go through those and happy to answer questions after the presentation.
Yeah, this is actually a 3-hour coffee and climate, Jeremiah, so hope you're prepped.
Oh, excellent.
I'm just kidding.
So one of the things I think that we really need to talk about, and to be entirely honest, it was partly the thing that brought me to the city of Portland years ago, was the legacy of the divided street situation in Portland. And there was a period of time Portland was in serious economic decline, 1960s, and it took on the services headed by this Austrian-born individual, Victor Gruen, who was a very interesting fellow. Um, his take was, how can we make cities a bit more like suburbia? How do we make them really convenient to drive around in? And so that led to a plan, Patterns for Progress, in 1967, which spurred a whole lot of things. In 1972, the city made a decision with regards to State and High streets, and rather than be two-way in operation, which they had been for well over 100 years, they go back to some of the earlier days of the city, they were made into one-way, traffic-focused arterials. And there is still some debate to this day about whether or not they did it for mobility purposes or they did it because they wanted to save some money on installing less traffic equipment. And the folks who made the decisions in those days are not here to answer those questions, so feel free to rampantly speculate among yourselves and gossip. So in 1972, that happened. Then in the 1970s, we had the Libbytown neighborhood, which was pretty significantly chewed up by the construction of Libbytown. Again, we had sort of this one-way bifurcation with Congress Street and Park Avenue, which just created a lot of challenges for anyone who wasn't driving. Certainly, if you were driving, it was great. You could just fly all around the city at top speed. Topic we're not going to talk too much about today because, honestly, it's a huge topic all by itself. But Spring Street Arterial, and then most importantly, what was then Franklin Arterial, just significant, massive changes in how the city worked and functioned, hundreds of units of housing torn down. As you can see on the right, you can see the beginnings of the creation of the land for what became Franklin Arterial. You can see as you look toward Back Cove, just significant, construction, destruction, however you want to call it. There was a lot of change in the land use in Bayside, and that work continued on to result in Franklin. I want to talk a little bit about State and High. It's a very interesting project. It has a pretty significant history. It goes back over 20 years now. There has been interest among some constituencies and increasingly those in the city family and outside of the city family to look at, well, how would these streets work if they were made two-way again? And, a lot of this is really being done with a focus on safety, but also to try to reduce things like confusion, speeding, recirculation. And so at this time, there is a signal project that is in Maine DOT's work plan, which will fully replace all the traffic signals on the State and High corridors. New signage, new ADA, new ramps, head equipment phasing, the whole 9 yards. And so, as part of that, we're also going to end up with a two-way reversion now, which we will add additional mast arms, modify pavement markings, do geometric lane adjustments. And we're looking at basically an $11 million project for this. A little more than half of that is driven by the base project that DOT is doing. And the rest is driven by the two-way conversion and as well as the addition of bicycle facilities. As you can see in the image here in the slideshow, this is a rendering of what two one-way facilities would look like on State Street. And right now we've got a municipal state agreement that is going to the council later this month to, for the first time, officially memorialize a commitment by both DOT and the city to sign on to this agreement and essentially just put design into high-speed overdrive so that we can get this toward a deliverable project. During the early part of the public process for State and High, there were a lot of questions that came from the active transportation advocates in the community, as well as questions internally about, how do we find a way to better accommodate bicycles in particular in this part of the city? Right now, it's a real challenge going across from the Park Avenue area to the Casco Bay Bridge. So we expanded the evaluation to look at how we would do bicycle facilities. And the consultant we have been working with, VHB, did a pretty detailed evaluation looking at things like trees and green space, right-of-way limits, on-street parking impacts, and also just the safety elements. How do we try to accommodate things in a relatively safe way? And late last year, we actually did, after a public meeting, we did a public survey online. We got well over 100 responses, I believe actually closer to 200 than 100. And that was really helpful. It let folks provide a variety of input on some of the things we had been looking at. And it was helpful because essentially it gave us sort of the public preference in addition to, what staff thought was a reasonable way to go. And so based on that process, the recommendations as we now move ahead with design is to have 2 one-way bicycle facilities outside of the curb line on each side of State Street from Congress to York. And then as you go up the hill today, obviously you'll be able to go up and down in the future with 2-way. Where the space is tighter and there were real concerns about tree impacts, we're going to provide a bike boulevard design on Mellon Street over to Deering Street to get you over to the last block of State Street, where there'd be a facility to get you back up to Congress. So that will provide linkage essentially from Park Avenue and in the area of Deering Oaks to provide that connectivity. So we're pretty excited about this. We're definitely excited about the fact that the state is now fully committed, fully invested in working with us on this, and we can now proceed relatively quickly with getting this project to move forward. Another significant project that we're working on that has safety-based implications is Libbytown. This project also has a long history. It goes back to, over 20 years ago. A study that Portland Trails had conducted really identified a lot of broken linkages, a lot of challenges with active transportation, just sort of the overall general hostility of the area around Park and Congress and St. John to non-motorized transportation. And over the years, this has evolved into a design project. We had initially partnered with Maine DOT to submit this as a Reconnecting Communities grant. Unfortunately, after being awarded with a change in administration, that grant was rescinded. Unfortunately, it was viewed as too friendly to active transportation, and so that was taken away. The project as it currently stands, which is at what's called preliminary design report level or 60% design, reconfigures Congress Street, Park Avenue, and St. John Street. Congress and Park become 2-way streets from 295 to St. John Street, which essentially makes them entirely 2-way throughout their length. Put in a modern roundabout at Park and Congress. And then grade separated, physically separated bicycle facilities on both Congress and Park, which were intended to be the first construction of such facilities in Portland. Essentially, you would have one 2-way facility that would provide you with linkage all the way back over to the Four River multi-use trail to get you into town on Congress Street, and then 2 one-way facilities on Park Avenue, which would tie you eventually then back into the parking separated facilities on Park. And we have come back, done a repackaging. The city itself has submitted a $24 million grant application to USDOT for Safe Streets for All. And we're going to find out later this year if we're going to receive that award. So it's certainly a very compelling project. It would pretty significantly transform this area. It also has a lot of streetscape, improved transit accommodations embedded in it. It's just very significant. We really focused in this updated application for Libbytown on how we dial in on safety. There's a lot of areas of crash problems in Libbytown. You just have a lot of high-speed movements. You had a lot of merging and weaving by traffic, which also puts vulnerable users, particularly pedestrians, but to very little less of an extent, cyclists, at risk. So, we talked about the importance of having the roundabout where Park and Congress come in, which can reduce injury crashes by up to 80%. Protected bike lanes can reduce crash reductions, result in crash reductions of about 50% or so for cyclists. As another part of this, there would be improvements done to the CSX main line, which crosses Congress Street, just to the west of St. John Street. The goal is to provide a quad gate crossing there, which would completely cover that crossing, which would not allow vehicles to try to get through. And that generally has been shown to result in a 77 to 82% crash reduction. And certainly crashes between locomotives and anything else are horrific. Those are essentially some of the worst crashes you could possibly imagine. Where we do keep traffic signals, we'd look at implementing lead pedestrian intervals, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more. Lead bike intervals, which are similar in idea for lead pedestrian intervals, but obviously specifically for bikes. And then transit signal priority technology, which is intended to provide more benefit for Metro's vehicles, providing more green time for them when they're approaching a traffic signal. So obviously, what I alluded to at the beginning of the presentation, in April of 2025, the City Council adopted the Vision Zero goal that was set forth by GPCOG. City staff pretty quickly pivoted from that to update the Complete Streets policy to be more in line with Vision Zero in August of last year. Folks are maybe aware, it's not a big conversation today, but there is also a new comprehensive transportation plan underway right now, which is in its early stages. That's a very exciting project that really is going to be looking at how to tie all these disparate threads of everything going on together in a coherent way, in a way that hopefully can allow us to, have a fiscally constrained, prioritized series of goals and objectives and things that the city can do for the foreseeable future. Right now, we're also onboarding, as they call it, and being trained in a software tool called Urban SDK. This is a tool that allows us to broadly look at and then microscopically look at speed and safety issues on all of our streets. I think folks know and understand, and there's been a lot of conversation about it, about speeds in Portland and how speeds can translate into safety issues. So one of the things we want to understand is, what are those situations like everywhere? Right now, we can only get little bits of data here and there. This will allow us to get much better information. Also underway and will be in place within a month or so, we're going to add lead pen intervals at about another 20 plus intersections, which is about a fifth of all the intersections in the city. We'll be adding that. And lead pedestrian intervals essentially function in the sense that when the pedestrian interval comes up, there is a period of time where the pedestrians start to cross and no traffic can move. This allows pedestrians more time to cross. This also allows them to be more visible. And it is definitely a very successful tool in reducing conflicts and ultimately crashes between vehicles and pedestrians, which is important. The other thing I want to note is it isn't just talk with the city and Vision Zero. This fiscal year, the council, saw fit to provide $1.1 million in support for various Vision Zero related projects. So, one of the things I just was talking about was signal safety efforts. We're going to be looking at a lot of different things there. A project match for a demonstration project for Brighton Avenue. We were successful last year in getting funding for a demonstration project from Wayside Street to Taft. Again, I won't be going into the details of that today, but that's yet another thing that we're working on. We're also looking at, in the short term, providing lighting improvements at a number of locations, traffic signals, crossings. We also have a preliminary design. We've identified the highest risk pedestrian crossings based on crash and injury data citywide. And so we've started design, which includes things like curb extensions, things like medians, things like RFBs, things like enhanced lighting. So those things are under design. We're also actively working on traffic calming and other physical interventions. We may see as soon as this month speed tables installed on Ocean Avenue near the elementary school and Chevron. We are partnering with Maine DOT on a project on Deering Avenue. We'll see some raised devices there as well. We're really trying to focus on these challenging corridors, these corridors that have presented risk, and when opportunities come up, really aggressively pursue finding strategies to address speeding, address conflicts, try to protect our most vulnerable travelers. So, I mean, just this year, related specifically to Vision Zero, I've talked about the high-risk pedestrian crossings. We also installed RFBs at 3 locations this year, most recently at Dartmouth and Baxter Boulevard, which is an area that's been of a lot of concern for pedestrians. Our inspection staff did detailed, in-depth observations and reviews of all the school zones in the city. And we reviewed those for operations, we reviewed those for signage, pavement markings, conditions of sidewalks. And so we're beginning to build a series of recommendations for that. We've already met with the school department to look at how we can partner on some of those things, because some of those things are not infrastructurally related. They are really about how the school zones are managed. And not to put too fine a point on it, but when it comes to parents and drop-offs for children, we have met the enemy and they are us. That is a huge safety concern. We also, in the last few months, put in some very aggressive, what we call blank out signs, and also did those lead pedestrian intervals that I just mentioned at Franklin and Cumberland and Franklin and Congress. And we're already finding that information, that feedback is proving very beneficial at those locations, which can be very stressful for pedestrians. We're also in the process of completely overhauling the traffic signal at Congress and Frost, as well as the traffic signal at Stevens and Pleasant. Stevens and Pleasant in particular, it's in an area with a lot of people walking, a lot of children. So that intersection is going to be much more aggressively providing feedback to motorists not to turn on red. We're really trying to make sure that there are not those conflicts. We're also about to release an RFP for a lighting study to look at a citywide review of lighting. And a lot of that gets back to safety. We can do these sort of spot reviews, but we also need a better guiding plan about that. And so we've got $300,000 set aside for that study. So hopefully you'll be seeing a lot more about that in the coming months as well. And so I want to get to this last topic, because this is a good transition to what Cashel's going to be talking about. But there are a number of community-sponsored demonstration projects that are going on right now in the city. I suspect anybody who's gone pretty much anywhere in town has probably seen at least one of them. We have we'll call it a program. That might be a bit of an overstatement, but essentially we've outlined a way that community partners, they could be neighborhood organizations, they could be some other nonprofit like Portland Trails, but different organizations have come together to come up with these interventions after they've sort of determined that they've determined some safety concerns. This year, a record 9 proposals were approved for installation and monitoring. Typical components of these projects are flex posts. On the picture on the right, you can see some of those, painted curb extensions, crosswalk enhancements, and then some of the more ambitious ones, and that's something Cashel will talk more about, planter boxes, street furniture. As part of this, and in keeping in good faith with what the main DOT requirements are, and also so we understand better how these things work, there are data collection requirements, both pre and post installation, to understand, are these things working? Are they making a difference? Is it slowing traffic? Are pedestrians more easily able to cross? So, that's important for us too. When we get this information back at the end, one of the things that DPW can do is look at these, and where these have been really successful, these are things we can identify for future deployment as far as permanent infrastructure in a future project. And then the picture on the right, this was done last year, but this has been updated again this year by the Urbanist Coalition of Portland, Washington Avenue and Madison Street. This is over near the Root Cellar. I think it's been a really good addition to this section of Washington Avenue. And at the bottom there is the link for demonstration projects that outlines the whole process and how it works. So thank you all for listening to this presentation. I think, working together, we can certainly see improvements to safety in Portland.
Great. Thanks, Jeremiah. That was really great. Good overview of things that are going on. Looking forward to Cashel in just a moment, but I do have remind people that we, put your questions in the Q&A section. We're getting some good ones. And also, if you have questions, we'll be able to take some live ones at the end. But before we move forward, I do want to take one question out of the Q&A, kind of a definition of terms question. So we can make sure everyone is on the same page, and it might come up during Cashel's presentation too. If you could tell us specifically, what are bicycle facilities, Jeremiah?
Bicycle facilities come in many shapes and forms. A bicycle facility could be as limited as a marking to share the road and the lane on a low volume street with a cyclist and signage. It could be a bicycle lane on the side of the street. It could be a separated bicycle lane where, we're starting to look at ways to essentially provide a completely physically separated facility on the side of the road specifically for bicyclists. And I think, that's increasingly considered best practice. And so when we're doing significant projects, I think we're going to be trying to really, enhance these bicycle facilities. The Franklin Street project, which could be in a presentation all by itself, which I didn't get into detail on today, is, that's a huge, huge, huge priority of theirs. York Street from State to High, which is another project that's moving ahead, which I also didn't have time for today. We'll also be looking at facilities that are basically up more in the sidewalk realm than in the motor vehicle realm. So bicycle facilities is a pretty general term, but it's essentially, how do we better provide either information, feedback, or specific space in the roadway for cyclists.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeremiah. So now, if you could drop your slides, we'll let Cashel put his up and get right into it. Go for it, Cashel.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Cashel Stewart, Transportation Planning Manager for the Greater Portland Council of Governments. I'm going to be talking a bit more about what Jeremiah finished his presentation on, which is sort of near-term, quick action related to our local and regional transportation system. But seeing as it's coffee and climate, I wanted to just ground us briefly in some of the goals and climate action plans at the state level, local level. So Maine Won't Wait has a goal to reduce light-duty vehicle miles traveled per vehicle by 20%. I believe that's by 2050. And then Connect 2050 is our regional long-range transportation plan, and it's got a ton of goals about expanding choices for your mode of travel, improving access for all people, improving safety across the board, and at the regional level, we have a goal of reducing vehicle miles traveled per capita in half by 2050, which is definitely ambitious. And then One Climate Future, I don't think has an exact goal for vehicle miles traveled reduction, but it has a ton of strategies related to complete streets, bike accessibility, and some of the things I'll talk about that are aimed at decreasing private vehicle use. And really that vehicle miles traveled reduction is about emissions reduction. And it takes a lot to get somebody to, turn a trip from a car into, walking or biking. We have, created communities that Jeremiah touched on that are dangerous, that are inconvenient to get around that way, and are certainly not always accessible to everyone. So, how do we shift our mode of travel? It is these three things, and many within these three things, but making it more convenient. And that's complete streets, which that a term that gets thrown around a lot, but really is aimed at ensuring street design considers all modes. So where there was not a bike lane, and maybe there should have been, adding that bike lane that Jeremiah just touched on. And then network planning and prioritization. So building the network, gaps in sidewalk where we need to fill that gap so somebody can get all the way from A to B. And then by making it safe, which is what I will definitely focus most of my time on today, something the region is really bonded behind, which is Vision Zero, which is a shared goal of 0 fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. And we have really stark numbers about how many people are being killed on our roads, and not to mention those seriously injured. And that'll impact your life in a variety of negative ways, and your families and everything. So 29 people killed on our roads, in our region's roads last year. So we're really working hard to right that trend and hopefully get to 0 by 2050. And then by making it accessible, so making sure everyone, the elderly, people with disabilities, non-English speakers, can use our transportation system and get around. So take a step back, talk about Vision Zero here. I mentioned it. It's really is a culture shift. It's a reframing of how we think about our transportation system. The traditional approach would have said that traffic deaths are inevitable, something we just take for granted. Vision Zero says that they are preventable, and we're going to make an effort to change that. The traditional approach says everyone's perfect, and we know that people make mistakes, so we're going to plan knowing that someone might be texting or doing something ill-advised. Traditional approach would prevent collisions, so sort of deemed all crashes pretty similar. Vision Zero really looks at the worst types of crashes. We're okay with a little fender bender here and there, but we want to zero in on the life-altering types of crashes. And then traditional approach would look at individual responsibility. See that a lot, sort of the blame game, right? Somebody, it's their fault, they messed up. Vision Zero says it's a systems approach. We've sort of set them up for failure here. And then traditional approach would say saving lives is expensive. These things are too expensive. We can't do them. Vision Zero says saving lives is not expensive. You can't put a number on saving someone's life. And the U.S. Department of Transportation has essentially adopted Vision Zero. They call it the safe system approach, but it's all baked in the same basic tenets, which you can see here in this wheel. So it starts with safe road users, so people paying attention. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were introducing the topic, but I cannot see your slides.
Oh, bummer.
Did you share your screen?
Yeah, I thought I did. That's silly. One sec.
You can try again, and if not, you could share it with me, and I can share it.
Should be going. Oh, is it just my desktop? I think I hit the wrong.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, I want my slides showing. Let's see.
And we'll share the presentation and slides later too.
Yes. Okay, I think it's popping up. I see a black screen. Okay. There we go. Okay, awesome. I can see it. Thank you so much, Cashel.
Okay. Well, there you go. Man One Way, Connect 2050, One Climate Future, making it convenient, making it safe, making it accessible. Vision Zero, there's the targets, and the culture shift. And there's the wheel.
Perfect.
We're caught up. So safe road users, safe vehicles, that's sort of tech in vehicles. Newer vehicles are much safer to drive around in. Safe speeds. We know speeds are responsible for crashes being more severe and resulting in more fatalities and serious injuries. And safe roads. So that's the design and some of the things Jeremiah was talking about, two-way versus one-way, and then post-crash care. So the ability for emergency response systems to get to people and save lives that way. And really, when you bring all those 5 things together, you get redundancy that is important for saving someone's life. So, when all 5 of those fail, which would be a very hard thing, somebody might die. But if you have these layers of protection, as you see on the right, you might have somebody who is texting, going at unsafe speed in an older vehicle, but the design of the road had a guardrail protecting a multi-use path. And so the vulnerable road user is separated from that that driver, and the person bounces off the guardrail, and their a lost life is avoided. So that is Vision Zero in a nutshell. And now shift talk about Safe Streets for All a little bit. This is a grant that US DOT launched in 2021. It put $5 billion towards over 5 years towards projects aimed at reducing fatalities and serious injuries. An unprecedented amount of money for that sort of thing. And really, they've been awarded all over the country. We have gotten several of these at GPCOG that we put towards various projects that I'll get into. Portland got theirs. Well, it is under contract, but they have been awarded their last year's Safe Streets for All grant to do work on Brighton Ave. We've also got these action plans that that GPCOG has put together. So in 2023, we put together a Vision Zero action plan for the urban communities, and then the following year we followed up with our more rural communities out near the Sebago Lakes region, and we'll actually be updating both of those plans with new data and things like that in the next month. And those plans are a great resource. I do encourage you to check them out. There's a lot of map layers and things you can look at that gets into the details. It looks at the high injury network, so where the worst crashes have happened over the last few years. So you can see the real problem areas where we are focusing our energy and money. The high risk network, which looks at the design of the road and where crashes are more likely to occur, and that brings in a lot of different things about the road. How many lanes and the speed limit and things like that. And then we also brought in community concerns and had a big, community engagement effort as part of the action plan. And we also looked at transportation equity layers and where disadvantaged communities are living to focus our energy. And in the back of that plan is many, many objectives related to taking action, and won't go into any of those in detail, but you can see they're sort of set up by those main tenets of Vision Zero: safer roads, safer speeds, that kind of thing. And we've seen 2 communities in our region, including Portland, take our action plan and create a local action plan based on it. And so you see Portland on the right here has taken a lot of those same goals from the back of our regional action plan, and sort of answered how we're working on it, and added some others that the city are working towards. And Jeremiah got in a ton of detail there. And then Yarmouth has done a very similar thing locally. And one way we're using all that Safe Streets for All funding, some of it went to the action plan, some of it is going to intersection safety redesigns, but a lot of it is going towards demonstration projects. And one of the main reasons for that is these are awesome projects that are low cost. They are temporary. They really give us a chance to test things out. And so we've done, as part of this grant, we've done 6 of these, and we've got 3 more coming up next year. And I'm actually going to go into detail on several of these and show you the impact that these types of projects are having region-wide. I think first, I'm just going to show that these are very involved processes. Jeremiah shared a bit about how the city receives a community organization's proposal for one of these, but on the other end is a lot of effort going into these projects. Kind of doing a lot with a little. So, over the course of the year, we're going from preliminary design and stakeholder engagement, these sort of pre-installation data, which comes in survey form, and collecting traffic data, speed data. We did pedestrian yield surveys on Commercial Street this year. So literally crossed the road 100 times and counted how many cars went by before stopping to a pedestrian. So all that happens before the project goes in. There are, approvals from the locality and from state and federal partners. Ordering materials can take time and energy, but we try to install them so they can be in for a good 4-month period. So we try to get them in July and take them out in mid-November. And then while they're in, do another round of post-installation data collection, both a survey, usually a public meeting of sorts, and more traffic data collection, and then put that all in a report that the city or town can use to inform future decisions and have something to go off that they know works, a proven strategy that they feel good about investing in. So here's a project we did last year in Saco on Route 1. This is a temporary speed table. We've seen a ton of these go in lately in the last couple of years, but this one was on Route 1, which has 25,000 cars per day. It's fairly unprecedented to have a speed table on a arterial road of this size, but speeding was a real issue. And this crosswalk right here is right in the vicinity of Thornton Academy, the local high school. And it's a mid-block crossing that is nowhere near another crossing. So we really wanted to slow people into this crosswalk and make sure they're stopping for mostly school-age children trying to cross the street. And we took a lot of people to install, put it that way. Each of those little pieces were 40 pounds, and there was over 100 of them. So we did it overnight. But we saw speeds reduced by 5 miles per hour. And we also saw all crashes reduced by almost half, and 0 injury crashes and 0 bike ped crashes during the project. So it's really an overwhelming success, for speed tables on arterials. The data really speaks for itself here. And the city council in Saco has voted to put it in permanently now because of the data we were able to collect with, a project that only cost about $20,000 to do. Another project in South Portland. This is Westbrook Street, right at the entrance of Red Bank Community Center and the neighborhood beyond. This is a project where you've just got a ton of pavement, you've got long crosswalks, and we really want to create some gateways. So tell people that are coming off the busier Westbrook Street, and a lot of them are coming right off 295 and coming into this neighborhood, that, this is a slow down area. We want speeds to be closer to the speed limit, under it, and for pedestrians to have a shorter crossing distance. And then a splash of South Portland blue in there to give it some life. South Portland Public Works helped us out with that one. Here we saw speeds reduced by 3 miles per hour. So, we were really trying to target that 85th percentile, 99th percentile speed, those people that were, going much faster. And we got that 85th percentile speed under 25 miles per hour. So we deemed this a success, knowing there's probably more beyond what we did that could help here, but saw pretty good results. There was one fender bender crash, which was on pace with what we'd normally see, but no injury crashes and no bike ped crashes during the project. And then a Portland project. This is Washington Ave, Outer Washington Ave, between Presumpscott Street, Veranda Street, all the way to Ocean Ave. We did a ton of different things with this project that we sort of had to test individually, but among them were pedestrian refuge island, as you can see right here at Kidder Street, and then some curb extensions. This is a curb extension at Presumpscott Street that is being considered for permanence as part of the Rue Institute upgrades in the neighborhood. And we saw speeds reduced again with the work that we were doing by 3 to 4 miles per hour close to Veranda Street, where we did a road diet, and 1 to 2 miles per hour close to Ocean Ave, where we were doing the pedestrian refuge islands. Bike ped crashes completely gone, and then injury crashes reduced by quite a bit. There are a lot out there, 143 injury crashes since 2015, so only 2 during the project, so that was a big positive. Survey responses were mixed on this project. There was a lot to respond to, and the corridor is still busy and congested, so people had a lot, to say about that. But congested was not something we were trying to fix. We were trying to keep speed slow and keep people safe. So, letting the data speak for itself. I think this is also a successful project. And then to get to 2026, we've got a project on Commercial Street. This is another project where we're testing a ton. Commercial Street is chaotic. We're testing improvements that were recommended in the Commercial Street Master Plan that the city did in 2021. You can see a mural here that's been put on the end of Dana Street. We've got some curb extensions, truck loading zones. This aerial was taken when it was half complete, so there have been some additions made since then. But we really are trying to look at 3 recommendations from the Commercial Street operation plan, operation and master plan. And they are improving pedestrian visibility, which is really tough with big trucks parking in the middle of the street and angled parking on the side of the road. So we have these curb extensions. We've got the designated truck loading zones. And then another recommendation in the plan was a Dana Street plaza, some placemaking features. And so we worked with the local Wabanaki artist, Marissa Jolie, who did, with a team of volunteers a few weeks ago, a mural on Dana Street. And then we've done 6 parklets that we filled with picnic benches and planters as part of this project. So this one's taken a village. It's out there now, and we're monitoring it, and we'll start collecting data in about a month with the survey and that sort of thing. But so far, so good. And a few things to touch on, and then I can turn it over for Q&A. I focused mostly on Vision Zero and Safe Streets today, but wanted to mention a few other ways we're taking action at the regional level. We have, a real effort to embed complete streets in our processes, and a lot of that has to do with how we fund these bigger projects that Jeremiah is talking about. And so this regional complete streets design guidebook really helps us embed complete streets very early in the scoping of a project and make sure all of our communities are playing, with the same guidebook, that things are going to look consistent, and we're even using the same terminology and things like that. So that was a great resource document that we got done last year. And then the regional trail plan also was passed last year, and that really looked at, we know trails to be the lowest stress bike ped facility you can have. It's nowhere near vehicles. You can see in the photo here, if they're wide and trudging through nature, then it's a pleasant experience. And so the regional trail plan really looked at a network gap analysis and tried to prioritize where we'd make improvements to our regional trail network in the next 10, 20 years. So that was a great effort. And then one of our Mobility for All programs, the Community Transportation Leaders Program, has been around for 5, 6 years now. And this gives an opportunity for disadvantaged communities to come to the transportation decision-making table through a training process. These folks have cohorts of elderly people, people of color, English as a second language. Make sure that people who have often not been at the table for transportation decisions are. And we have a ton of these community transportation leaders now involved in civic processes, involved in advisory panels and things like that, based on this program. So that's fantastic. And then a couple South Portland projects, so that we're not leaving South Portland out. they are working on a ton, is the short of it. They've got a lot of complete streets projects and network building projects, adding sidewalks on Running Hill Road and Broadway. In That's happening this summer. They are doing a ton of accessibility upgrades, so ADA upgrades to ramps and sidewalks and crossings, usually in tandem with paving work that's already happening. And then they've got out to bid this year more pedestrian improvements, including an intersection redesign at Hill Street, and then the Lincoln Street multi-use path, which has been a saga for many, many years. That's going to connect the Eastern Trail, a green belt, in with the Veterans Memorial Bridge. So two multi-use paths on both sides, and really connecting that multi-use path network. They've got several safety redesigns on Westbrook Street and Broadway, on Market Street and Mill Creek, and then Western Ave at Westbrook Street and Gorham Road, that are going to be happening in the next year with some engagement opportunities. And then maybe most exciting is Bike Ped Master Plan that they'll be kicking off in late 2026, early 2027. That will look at network connectivity, where to make improvements, where to prioritize efforts throughout the city. So I'll stop sharing and we can take a few minutes for Q&A. Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. That
Thank
was
you so much.
very thorough explanations of a lot of topics, and I'm sure we could go on for much longer with all the different things going on in Portland, South Portland, and across the region.
We'll do an extended cut next time.
Yeah. So, okay, I think I'll kick it off with a question. Again, if people have a live question, you can raise your hand. But I know both of you have worked kind of regionally. I know, Jeremiah, you even had the pleasure of working on the Big Dig. So you have experience working on, kind of bigger projects around the region. I was wondering how you take that, what you've learned regionally or in other parts of the country to apply to work that's happening right here in Portland.
Well, I mean, I could certainly speak to that. So, one of the things that we try to do here at Public Works and planning staff, I believe, I can't really speak for them too much, but, we try to reach out, have conversations with peers around the country. I will sometimes have like discussions on the American Bike Ped Professional Forum to get information about things. We've gone to NACTO conferences, North American Council of Committee of Transportation officials, to talk with other cities about things we can do. Back when we were designing the bicycle facilities on Park Avenue near Deering Oaks, we were talking to peers in California. There's a lot of sort of general principles and ideas and standards, but sometimes you really do need to talk to people in other places who've done things and worked on things to find out how you can actually make things happen. The nice thing about these demonstration projects, some of the things that, we're working on with GPCOG, but also some of the things that organizations are now taking on themselves, we have ways to, really test things before we permanently commit to them. And that may help us in the future also just be a lot more sensible about how we spend funds. Do we really want to spend a lot of money on something that really doesn't have much effect? And, at the risk of getting myself in trouble, some years ago on Washington Avenue Extension, there were some islands, some little median islands, not real medians, honestly, installed. And the thought was that would reduce vehicle speeds and improve safety. It certainly had some effect on getting folks to yield more often to pedestrians, but at the end of the day, it had no impacts on vehicle speed. But, if those had been tested, say with some flex posts and some paint, it might have saved tens of thousands of dollars to the taxpayer. So, now we have some better ideas about how to test those things. And, this is still an evolving area of safety. I would say that, in reality, there are peers in other countries and other parts of the world who have been doing the things we're still trying to figure out for a long time now. And we can continue to learn from them. But at the end of the day, this is an emerging process and we're going to keep continuing and learning. But I think we are at the point where we're starting to figure out some things. And really, at the end of the day, as long as we stay focused on safety, I think we're going to be able to start seeing some real movement on that topic.
Hey, Cashel, do you have a perspective on that?
I do, but if there are other questions, we can. I think Jeremiah gave a pretty solid answer there.
Great. Uh, One is kind of very specific, and maybe you can, it's for Jeremiah, you can quickly, the Libbytown Bridge, I got some questions about like what's the future of the Libbytown, you had mentioned Libbytown project, and there's the old rail bridge. Is that part of a future plan for connectivity or?
The answer is maybe. That was a facility that was given to us by the Maine DOT a few years back in a land swap deal. And one of the things, there's a couple of issues with that. One is we're going to need to do a fairly formal assessment of the structural integrity of that facility before we commit future funds to it. Two, thus far, our conversations with CSX, they've been, I guess I'll say, reticent in providing us with, positive feedback or any really helpful feedback to date on how we could integrate that into a connective tissue adjacent to their main line. I mean, as a potential facility, it certainly would be unparalleled in providing connectivity for that area. But for the time being, we have the Union Branch Trail, which is under construction, mostly done at this point, and that's going to come out next to Hadlock Field. There's going to be an improved pedestrian crossing on St. John Street. We're going to be getting connections in the future on Valley and then back over to Congress. And the city's in early discussions about other connectivity options there. So even if the bridge doesn't pan out, you're going to be seeing a lot of improvements in this area for bike and ped connections.
Well, Carly.
Yeah, actually I have a question, but I'm trying to think maybe if there's, yeah, I don't see any other questions in the chat. And if you have a question that you want to ask live, just raise your hand and I can unmute you. But I'm gonna ask my question if that's okay. And also I would just like to say thank you so much for both of your presentations. I feel like they've been a really great overview. And I know, like you said, you probably would need so much more time. But it's been great. And your work is really important because it's really challenging to undo just systems of things that have happened before you and are kind of ongoing at like national, state, and city level before our time. So it's, yeah, I just wanted to recognize that it is a challenge to undo those things. So thank you for your work. And
Oh no, she froze. Oops. Oops, she's back.
that was pretty bad timing. I got kicked out. Weird. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead with the
Yes.
question, Carly.
Okay. Really leaving it on a cliffhanger there. My question is, what's the single biggest barrier in both of your opinions on, I guess, like reducing car dependency in Portland and South Portland? I guess, yeah, right now. And is it funding? Is it political will? Is it public opinion? It feels like right now there is more. I've noticed more people talking about it. We've had a record number of traffic calming demonstrations. I've seen the Munjoy or like Slow the Hill Down project. So I feel like I've noticed more talk about it and people are kind of understanding what's going on. And but I would love to know, in your opinion, what the biggest challenge or challenges are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's transportation funding, especially here in our region where, I mean, globally, asphalt prices, construction prices are through the roof. And so a project you might have budgeted for 4 years ago and had everything ready is now doubled in price. And so you're scrambling to find the rest of the money, and that's pushing out other projects.
Is that because of tariffs?
It's from everything.
Okay, just inflation, tariffs, everything, the world.
Yeah, everything's up.
Got it.
But the other thing is, a lot of money is going towards sort of overbuilding for the car, I would say. It's like all the bridges over 295 were all built in the 50s. And here we are 70 years later, and they all need to be upgraded at the same time. And so a lot of our money is like going towards maintaining these facilities. I think there's a Casco Bay Bridge painting project that costs $30 million next year that we have to do.
Just to paint it?
just to paint it, but the paint is going to make sure its useful life lasts another however many years. So it needs to be done.
Is that for aesthetics or is that for um
It's definitely to keep its useful life going.
okay.
So we don't have to build a completely new bridge. But those types of mega things that we really didn't plan great for financially, it's all coming ahead right now, and it pushes out a lot of the projects that people are ready to go on.
And so with something like a comprehensive transportation plan that they're working on, is that going to kind of improve the staggering of those types of projects going forward? Is that something that will address? I know Nell isn't here to talk about it, but
I'm sure Jeremiah could touch on the prioritization effort that might be part of that.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the challenge is, when we're talking about things like bridges, Portland, thankfully, other than the exception that we just discussed in Libbytown, we are not in the business of bridges. I'm grateful for that. It is a terrible business to be in, and but Cashel's 100% correct. We have a lot of aging infrastructure, and it's basically time to pay the piper. And there, to what extent there's really been a seriousness about looking at what it means to keep maintaining these facilities in their current form, or if there should be a different form, or if there should be other considerations. It's really primarily been focused on just keeping that status quo going. And we can have different conversations about good, bad, and different, but it's expensive. It's an expensive status quo. And so, ultimately there needs to be a conversation, not just in Portland, around Portland, regionally, but at a state and a national level. Like, how do we really address these things? There are, more and more organizations starting to ask these types of questions, because right now it's very difficult to see how we can sustain the track we're on. It's just that, I mean, the Maine Department of Transportation had to secure a large federal grant just to update traffic signals. Do you want to point fingers at Augusta? Do you want to point fingers at Washington? Point fingers in any direction you want, but that's also the reality. That's where we're at right now. So, there ultimately there's probably going to have to be a top to bottom exploration of how we do everything. I don't know if we're there yet as a society, but it's going to have to be a serious conversation, because the world that our transportation system was created in, this panacea of post-war abundance,
Yeah.
it is gone.
Yeah,
So
all that
what do we do with the future that's coming? So the sooner people can be serious about that and have those conversations, I think the sooner we can get to work on finding ways to really resolve these challenges. But it will be hard.
Yeah.
These are, when I look at the amount of time and effort that goes into, say, the project on Commercial Street, these are all temporary efforts. This is paint. These are flex posts. There's a lot involved with all of this. And unfortunately, we don't have a magic wand. We can't just make things happen immediately. So we're gonna have to talk very seriously in the future. Very seriously.
Yeah. So we're a little over time. It's been a very rich conversation and amazing information. And there's definitely more opportunities for public comment and for more information. So we're going to include information in the follow-up email, how the residents of Portland, South Portland can stay engaged in these conversations. So definitely take a look at that when it gets sent out later this afternoon. And again, I want to thank Jeremiah and Cashel for all this great information. Thank everyone for some great questions, and we look forward to seeing you all again next month.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.